Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to talk about a couple of things that have happened in the community recently. I won't take too long because we want to get on with Klaus and his main talk. So basically there's a couple of things that have been announced by a company called Heptio. Heptio has actually been founded by the founders of Kubernetes, or a couple of them anyway, Craig McLuckie and Joe Beda. So they've been releasing some items into the public domain, and recently they just announced two new projects that they've just released. So the first one is called Arc, and also Sonarboy, as you can see here. So this is the announcement blog. We'll be putting links up to everything that I show in the Kubernetes Meetup page. So basically Arc is really solving a problem that a lot of people have had with Kubernetes, and that's how to back it up. So they need a simple way to back up, to snapshot the cluster state, maybe to migrate that to another cluster, to clone it, or just to recover from a failure situation. So Arc gives you a very comprehensive and elegant way of doing that. And you know, coming from the people that created Kubernetes, it's pretty robust, as you can imagine. So it basically does an additional thing that's actually pretty much genius, really. So one of the, apart from backing up the state of Kubernetes itself, you can actually back up the state of the persistent volumes that you've claimed. So it does this using snapshots in the particular cloud provider, such as AWS. So you can actually back up the persistent volumes, and then when you restore the state of, say, a namespace and the resources within it, you can get back the state of the persistent volumes at that point as well. That to me is a killer feature. So it's well worth looking at just for that alone, I would say. And certainly it's the most comprehensive solution that I've seen to date. So the other thing is Sonarboy, which also solves a pretty major kind of problem with Kubernetes, and that's its complexity. And that's also the number of distributions that you can get for Kubernetes. I think somebody counted, there's like 110 distributions. So how do you know what you've got is kind of correct, is like using the de facto standards and the best practices? It's very difficult to know that because it's so complex. So the Sonarboy project gives you like a validation of your Kubernetes cluster, and it does it non-intrusively, it does it non-destructively. So it can basically query your cluster setup, it can look at the values, and it can give you a report at the end of it to say, you know, whether you meet the criteria for being secure, standard, etc. So both those projects come from Heptio, are things the community really has asked for and have been pain points in the community. So they're both very welcome projects. So I mean, I've basically got some links as well that I'll put on the Kubernetes Meetup website. So the GitHub page for Arc and also for Sonarboy. And there's a guy called Lachlan Evanson who works for Microsoft now, but formerly Deis, and he does a lot of videos about all kinds of leading edge tech in the Kubernetes realm. So he's actually done a couple of videos. He's done one with Arc. So this is Lockie. So let me just stop Lockie. Thank you very much. And then he also did one for Sonarboy. So you just watch these videos, they're short.
Look at this results.tar.gz.
It's a little bit louder.
Under the E2E.
They're very short, so you can get a lot of value very quickly, and you can get a really good overview of exactly what these capabilities give you. So I really highly recommend watching these videos to get yourself up to speed on these projects. So the final thing I'm going to talk about is something called Rook. So Rook is a project to have file, block and object storage services for cloud native environments. So at the moment Kubernetes only, I think, but I think they have the intention to push that out to other types of orchestrator. So what it does is underneath it uses Ceph, which has been around for about a decade now, I think, and is battle hardened and tested, is very robust and resilient. And Ceph gives you all of the three types of storage that you need. It gives you block storage, file storage and object storage. So you're covering all bases there. So what they've done is they've basically created a Kubernetes operator that you can use to very simply provision a cluster, a Ceph cluster, and provision the block storage that you might require, or the sort of the object storage, the file system storage, and that's made available through Kubernetes storage classes. So you can just use persistent volume claims to spin up a persistent volume and attach it to a workload very simply. So they just released 0.5, which is built for Kubernetes 1.7. It still works with the earlier versions, but one of the big things it does now is it uses custom resource definitions, which is the replacement for third-party resources, which is something heavily used by operators. And also they've created a Helm chart to make it even easier to deploy, so you can get it up and running on your cluster very quickly. So there's basically a few links there which I'll put up as well. So this is the Rook homepage, and we can see a little bit more about it. As they say, battle tested production storage. So that's pretty much it. That's the three big things I'd say that have happened in the last few weeks. And I'll now pass over to Klaus. So, thank you very much.